Namawa. Today I'm going to talk about an important topic, and before we go into the topic, best wishes on Akshaya Tritiya for all of those who are celebrating today. As you know, in the past few days, the Supreme Court has been hearing a petition to legalize same-sex marriages in India. And in this context, somebody asked me about a claim made on the Wikipedia article, as you see it on your screen now, Hinduism and LGBT topics. So this is an article on Wikipedia, and it makes a very specific claim. The claim it makes is that, as you see on your screen now, such homosexual men were also known to marry, according to the Kāmasūtra. There are also third sex citizens, sometimes greatly attached to one another and with complete faith in another, who get married together. And the reference is KS 2936. It also goes on to claim, the Wikipedia article also goes on to claim that in the Jayamangala of Yashodhara, it is also mentioned that citizens with this kind of homosexual inclination get married together. The reference is reference number 57, and that is, as you see on your screen now, it is to the complete Kāmasūtra, and translation is by Alain Daniélou. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. So the question is on this claim, and I've been asked to verify whether this claim is correct. It is a shocking claim, let me put it that way. It is a shocking claim, and it is completely incorrect. This is actually propaganda. It is a distortion. It is propaganda, nothing else. And how? We'll see. We'll go through the exact reference. We will go through the Sanskrit commentary. We'll go through multiple English and Hindi translations. And then I'll show how Alain Danielou's translation is completely wrong. It is a distortion. And there's nothing of this sort mentioned in the Kāmasūtra. So as you know, the reference is to the Kāmasūtra. And this is the edition we are referring. This is published in 1900 CE at the Nirnay Sagar Press. And the verse is 2936, that is on your screen now. Tatha nāgarakas kecid anyonyasya hitaiṣiṇah kurvanti rūಢa vishvāsah paraspara parigraham. That is the verse, 2936. As per some editions, in some editions the number is different. And what the verse says is, Tatha, in that way, Nagaraka, citizens or city dwellers, or those with a Nagara vritti, those who are urbane. Kechid, some, Anyonyasya, of each other, Hitaiṣiṇah, well-wishing. So those citizens or those urbane people, some urbane people who are well-wishers of each other, Kurvanti rūಢa vishvāsah. Rūಢa vishvāsa, who trust each other, kurvanti, perform or do, paraspara parigraham, the act of holding each other, the act of accepting each other. Now, what is this context? This is the second book or the adhikarana of the Kāmasūtra, and it's the 9th chapter. The 9th chapter is on aupariṣṭaka. Aupariṣṭaka is oral congress, and also known as mukha maithuna in some contexts. So the whole context is on aupariṣṭaka, the acts of oral congress. And these verses, the verses before this verse and the verses immediately preceding and following both, these verses describe specific acts of oral congress among specific people. There is no context of marriage here, and that is what the Jayamangala commentary clarifies. The Jayamangala commentary parses the word paraspara parigraham as paraspara parigrahamiti Mama tavat kuru paschat tavapi karishyamiti. What paraspara parigraham means, you perform the act to me, and after that, I will perform the act to you. Yugpat va deha vyatyasena ragat kalam anapekshamana viti dvedham. Or at the same time, the two citizens or two urbane people perform this act to each other. So there is no mention or not even a hint towards marriage in the Jayamangala commentary of the Kāmasūtra. That is the original verse, and that's how the commentary explains it. There is no sense of marriage anywhere in this verse or in this context. Now let's look at some translations of the Kāmasūtra. The first translation we'll refer to is the translation by, please give me a moment, I'll bring it up on my screen. the first translation we will refer to is this translation by Richard Burton and F.F. Arbuthnot. I hope I got the pronunciation correct. This translation was originally published in 1883. It wasn't ascribed to the translators, and it was mentioned as the Hindu Kāmasūtra Society or just the Kāmasūtra Society. Multiple editions were published, but in this edition, as the preface by W.G. Archer correctly says, the present translation was first printed in 1883, and this edition ascribes it to the two scholars, Sir Richard Burton and F.F. Arbuthnot. And let's look at what these translators translate this verse 2936 as. It is also, so the previous verse translation is, the male servants of some men carry on the mouth congress with their masters. It is also practiced by some citizens who know each other well among themselves. So this translation has no hint of marriage, as the Wikipedia article incorrectly claims. This is another version. The next translation we are going to refer to is the translation by S C Upadhyaya, a scholar of Sanskrit, who also translated, if I remember correctly, the Rati Rahasya. Now this translation was published in 1961 by Tarapurwala in Mumbai, then called Bombay. And that is the translation. In this edition, the verse is numbered 32. So they have translated both the original verse, S C Upadhyaya has translated both the original verse and the main part of the commentary by the Yashodhar's commentary, Jayamangala. So let's see what the translation reads. It is also practiced by, it refers to oral congress, it is also practiced by some citizens who know each other well. That's it. And then in the parenthesis is the gist of the commentary. Sometimes citizens who are effeminate indulge in oral congress with each other simultaneously by lying alongside one another inversely. Some women also do the same, especially in harems, where there is a dearth of virile men. So that is the translation by S C Upadhyaya, which was done in 1961. Now let's move on to the translation by Alain Daniélou. This translation came out in 1994, if I'm not mistaken. And that's the book cover. And let's look at, that's the title page. And let's look at the translation of verse 36 in book 2 and chapter 9. So what does Alain Daniélou say? There are also citizens sometimes greatly attached to each other and with complete faith in one another who get married parigraha together. This is a gross distortion of the original text. In fact, Alain Daniélou also, maybe he got confused because the word parigraha, one of the meanings of the word parigraha indeed is marriage. For example, Sita parigraha refers to the marriage of Sita with Rama, the vivaha samskara or the wedding. However, in this context, from the preceding verses and the following verses, where the entire context is of oral congress, who performs it, who indulges in it, and which regions, which sort of people, whether it should be done by a specific class of people or not. So the whole context is about the act. It's not about any marriage or any sort of wedding. So in this context, the word parigraha cannot mean marriage. It does not, as per the commentary of Jayamangala. So let's see how the same translator has translated the commentary of Yashodhara, which is a Jayamangala commentary. So he says, citizens with this kind of inclination who renounce women and can do without them willingly because they love each other get married together. Again, he's paraphrasing now. And then do this to me and afterward I'll do this to you. Arranging their bodies in a contrary position, they are indifferent to everything. The section in quotes, that is from the Jayamangala commentary, does not talk about marriage. Now, Alain Daniélou has distorted this verse to interpret that they get married together, bound by a deep and trusting friendship. That is not the sense of the verse. In fact, the word paraspara parigraha, paraspara, marriage, wedding, a vivaha or a parigrahan, panigrahan samskara, is by definition, is by default mutual. There's no sense of saying that A married B but B did not marry A, because A and B get married together. So there's no need to prefix paraspara with parigraha if parigraha meant marriage. Parigraha in this context means accepting physically or holding, and that is what the sense of the verse is Paraspara Parigraha means the oral congress is done mutually. That is the sense of the word Paraspara Parigraha, and not getting married together. So that is the distorted translation by Alain Daniélou, which was published in 1994. We look at some other translations. So the next translation we are looking at is the translation by Wendy Doniger, who was notorious for her views, her biased views, and Sudhir Kakar or Sudhir Kakar. I'm not sure how he pronounces his last name. So this is published by Oxford University Press, and this was published in 2002. So let's look at how these two translators translate. They have done the correct translation. So if you look at verse 26, and in some way certain men about town who care for one another's welfare and have established trust do this service for one another. And what's the service? That service is mentioned in the translation of verse 35, indulge in oral sex. That's what the translation says. And their footnote is the translation of the commentary. Certain men about town, the ones who are practically women, take one another in friendship and give one another to the sensual pleasure of ejaculation. That's what the translation of the commentary reads. So let's look at another translation, which is from 2011 or 2012, and this is by Aditya Narayana Dhairyashil Haksar, who has translated several important Sanskrit texts into English. That's the cover and the title page, and let's see what his translation reads. So he says, some city men too. He's translated verses 35 and 36 together. So his translation of verse 36 is, some city men too, who are mutually caring and trustful as well, do this with each other. And what do they do? That is in the previous verse, perform oral coitus. That's what this verse essentially means, and it's been correctly translated by A N D Haksar also. Now we look at a Hindi translation. This is, you see it on your cover. It's done by Pandit Mādhavācārya, published by Khemaraj Sri Krishna. This is an old book, and this reprint is, I think, from 2010s. I'm not sure of the year, but this is a reprint. It's an old translation. So let's look at what the verse reads. That's a verse with the Hindi translation and the Sanskrit commentary by Yashodhara. इसी प्रकार आपस के हितैषी कुछ नागर आपस के अत्यंत विश्वास के कारण आपस में करते हैं. और so some nagar, some city men or some urbane people, because of mutual trust, perform this to each other. And what they perform is from the context, which is oral congress. And then what his Hindi commentary says, आपस में एक दूसरे को स्खलित होने का सुख करने के लिए आपस में अति विश्वास के कारण मैत्री भाव से तय करके करते हैं. And the sense is faithful to the commentary of Yashodhara, the Jai Mangala commentary. तू मेरा कर पीछे मैं तेरा कर दूंगा. So that is the sense. There's no hint to marriage at all in his entire translation of Pandit Mādhavācārya. So that is the Hindi translation by Pandit Mādhavācārya. Let's look at one more translation. This was published by Krishnadas Academy, or Krishnadas Academy as we say in English, Varanasi. And this is by Dr. Rāmānanda Śarmā. Now this translation, again verse 36, तथा nāgarakas केचिद् अन्योन्यस्य हितैषिणः कुर्वन्ति रूढ़ विश्वासाः परस्पर परिग्रहम्. इसी प्रकार कुछ कामुक नागरक भी परस्पर हितैषी एवं विश्वस्त सहचर बनकर एक दूसरे के साथ औपरिष्टक कर्म करते हैं. This is the very clear translation. The reference is to औपरिष्टक कर्म or mukha maithuna, and not to marriage, not to wedding, not to vivah. Now let's look at how some modern writers have analyzed this. This book is by Ruth Vanita, Love's Right, Same-Sex Marriage in India and the West. And what she says, she actually does not favor the marriage meaning. So she talks about same-sex union in the Kāmasūtra, and she then, well, she's not a scholar of Sanskrit, as if you look at this page number 35, there's so many mistakes like paraspara parigrahayoha. That's not even a Sanskrit word. And then she says parasparam ranjayeyuhuhu. It's ranjayeyuh, not ranjayeyuhuhu. So we can see I think she's a scholar of English. She studied English. She's not a Sanskrit scholar. So anyway, her observations are to be taken with a grain of salt. She says in a series of textual cruxes, the Kāmasūtra describes and so on, and then she says states that two men friends who have complete trust in each other may unite. So the term used is paraspara parigraham. Paraspara means mutual, and parigraha has many meanings, including take in marriage, have intercourse, take, accept, or seize. She cites Daniélou, translates this as get married together. Two Hindi translators as different, and Doniger as different. So, and then she says she has examined other uses of parigraha, and she comes to a conclusion that in some contexts parigraha is used for marriage also. However, as I said, Ruth Vanita is not a Sanskrit scholar, and she's simply citing the translation by Daniélou and other translators, so her word is not to be taken as the final word. Now let's look at this book, which came after Ruth's book, which is Tritiya Prakriti, People of the Third Sex, and it is by Amara Das Wilhelm, who's, if I'm not mistaken, he's a Hare Krishna or ex-Hare Krishna devotee. And what he says is, so now he simply comes to homosexual marriage and parigraha. Some scholars question Alain Danielou's translation of Kāmasūtra, which interprets the word parigraha as marriage. Like most Sanskrit terms, parigraha has many different meanings. In her book, Ruth Vanita analyzes this term and concludes, parigraha, unlike vivaha, can also be used to refer to different types of marriage, lower status ones and lasting bonds. So here Ruth Vanita's inference is completely unfaithful to Sanskrit, completely unfaithful to the original text. She, in fact, this reference is also there in her book, where she says parigraha, unlike vivaha, can be used to refer to different types of marriage, including lower status marriage. Now, I don't know where and when parigraha, the word parigraha, has been used for lower status marriage. So it is a complete imagination of Ruth Vanita's mind, and the same imagination is then cited by Amara Das Wilhelm, says parigraha, unlike vivaha, can be used to refer to different types. There's no different. Parigraha is just vivaha. When it means vivaha, and so it is not a lower kind of vivaha, because we also say sita parigraha, right? So we say parigrahan or panigrahan. So it refers to wedding or marriage, not a lower kind of marriage, and therefore this whole interpretation is wrong. It is a distorted interpretation based on the mistranslation. I'm not sure whether this was deliberate or inadvertent by Alain Daniélou, and so this claim on Wikipedia, if you ask me, it is wrong. It is propaganda and nothing else. The original verse of the Kāmasūtra, and I'm surprised that the claim ascribes the modern view, or rather not the modern view, the view of some people who peddle propaganda as the view of Jayamangala commentary. It's not the case. As we saw in the Jayamangala commentary, there's no reference to marriage. So this claim from Wikipedia is wrong. There is no reference to same-sex marriage or homosexual marriage in the Kāmasūtra or in the commentary by Yashodhara, the Jayamangala commentary. And this claim on the Wikipedia article that the Kāmasūtra refers to these kinds of marriages is wrong. It should not be relied upon. It should not be used to push any agenda or propaganda or to arrive at any judgment in the Supreme Court. That's all for this video. I'll see you in some other video. Once again, best wishes on Akshaya Tritiya. Namo.